Hello, and welcome to Here Comes the Bride, the Church Begins. I am Jim Devore, the pastor of Cornerstone Church of Littlerock in Southern California. So glad to have you with us for devotional number 56 of the book of Acts. We are in Acts chapter 22, beginning with verse 30. Acts 22:30, if you want to turn to that and join us. Let me catch you up on a few things. Paul is in Jerusalem. He's back from his third missionary journey. He has been grabbed by the Jews. The mob was about to hurt him, kill him, and the tribune, stepped in and rescued him. The tribune is the Roman general, or Roman commander is a better word for that, usually of over a unit of at least 1,000 men. And so the tribune came in and rescued Moses, yeah, right, easier for you to say. Just seeing if you're paying attention. Rescued Paul and brought him out away from them, and basically brought him into a room, and then was going to beat him, and discovered he was a Roman soldier, and refrained from beating him because you're not supposed to beat a Roman citizen. I just called Paul a Roman soldier. Now, if I was smart, I would just start over, okay? I've got Moses, and then I got Paul as a Roman soldier. So it would be Paul, and Paul as a Roman citizen, if you're keeping track and taking notes, okay? All right. I hope you're doing neither at this point. So we've got this, and we are in Acts 22:30. And so Paul has been kind of rescued, in a sense, by the tribune from the Jewish mob that wanted to kill him. He's been brought into a jail, okay, but they still have to deal with him as a man who created a disturbance, so they have to figure out exactly how to do that. So on verse 30, we pick up our story finally. Verse 30. Acts 22. But on the next day, desiring to know the real reason why he was being accused by the Jews, he unbound him and commanded the chief priests and all the council to meet, and he brought Paul down and set him before them. Okay, so he is the tribune, okay? He wanted to know why Paul was being accused by the Jews, so he unbound him, gave him freedom, and commanded the chief priests and all the council to come down. So they basically got to state their case. That's what's going on here. You guys have to state your case in a clear and concise manner without this mob rule, okay? And so you need to share that. And if you have a legitimate reason, then maybe I'll keep him longer. If you don't have a legitimate reason, maybe I'll let him go. So then that brings us to chapter 23, verse 1. Chapter 23, verse 1, okay? All right, so Paul's been brought down. He's been sent for the chief priests. Here we go. And looking intently at the council, this would be the council of the Jewish religious leaders, Paul said, "Brothers, I have lived my life before God and in all good conscience up to this day." That's as far as he gets. Look what happens in verse 2. And the high priest Ananias commanded those who stood by him to strike him on the mouth. Then Paul said to him, "God is going to strike you, you whitewashed wall. Are you sitting to judge me according to the law, and yet contrary to the law you order me to be struck?" Those who stood by said, "Would you revile God's high priest?" And Paul said, "I did not know, brothers, that he was the high priest, for it is written, you shall not speak evil of a ruler of your people." All right, there's a couple of things in this passage that are going to bring up some questions. And so I did a quick little history check here to help us out for part of it. Is one, why would the high priest Ananias decide to have Paul slapped? And that slap is not just kind of a tap across the face. It literally is the idea of beaten. He was hit hard, maybe once or more than once, okay? So was there a religious reason? Was there a reason from the law that Paul could have violated? Because Paul hasn't violated anything yet. All he said is, "Brothers, I've lived my life before God in all good conscience up to this day." So no law has been violated. When we do a quick little history check, it appears that Ananias, the high priest, was already known as a fairly cruel individual, that he used violence in a lot of his presentation and approaches he dealt with people. And so he's kind of got this history of this. So he's kind of showing his true colors even with Paul, and I'm trying to kind of submit him violently into doing what Ananias is going to want him to do later, probably to confess and to quit speaking about Jesus, or maybe even to have him killed. And so he slaps Paul. Paul retorts back in verse 3, "God is going to strike you, you whitewashed wall." Are you sitting to judge me according to the law, and yet contrary to the law, you order me to be struck? Paul's right there, by the way, is that Ananias has no right to strike Paul if he doesn't have an official reason yet to demonstrate he's guilty. So once he's guilty, there might be part of that law might be to strike him, but Ananias isn't even waiting. So Ananias' striking of Paul is determining that he's guilty before proven innocent. And Ananias shouldn't be doing that, because now that we're in an official court setting, we're no longer at mob rule. They're not supposed to do that either. Ananias should be walking through a process. So Paul's saying, look, you are trying to accuse me of breaking the law when I haven't done it yet, and you have broken the law by having me struck because I haven't been officially found guilty of anything. And now the last one's even more interesting in this little section here, is that they say to Paul now, those who stood by, verse 4, chapter 23, said, would you revile God's high priest? And Paul said, I did not know, brothers, that he was the high priest. For it is written, you shall not speak evil of a ruler of your people. Okay, so now Paul is being accused of reviling or shouting or being rude to the high priest. And Paul says, I did not know, brethren. And so how could he not, many have said, how could he not know the high priest? Well, two reasons. We'll give you two quick reasons for this. One, even though they're in a court setting, the tribune has brought them to him. So they're not in the court of the Sanhedrin right now. They're outside of that, wherever the tribune has asked people to come. So the high priest isn't wearing his official garb. He could be in a sense, regular street clothes. And it's possible that Paul would not recognize him. Paul's been out of Jerusalem for several years on his missionary journeys. Secondly, it's possible that Paul has bad eyesight. Some have said that the thorn in the flesh was Paul's eyesight. If that's the case, then he can't even see very well where he's at this point anyways. In either case, the issue is not how come Paul didn't recognize him, okay? It's not a big deal. A couple of good excuses for that. The interesting thing is that Paul actually humbly admits what he did wrong. He doesn't wait for the high priest to admit that he was wrong for hitting Paul because no charge was against him, okay? But Paul admits his own sin, okay, by saying, I did not know, brothers, that he was the high priest, for it is written, you shall not speak evil of a ruler of your people. What do we learn here? We learn that a believer always acts in humility, even when others around him are not. We don't fight fire with fire. We don't fight pride with pride. We respond in humility. And so it's a good reminder to us when we're upset with someone and we handle it in a wrong way, that we need to confess our own wrongdoing, even if the other person has something to confess on their own. You don't wait for them. You step forward and say, look, what you did was wrong, but the way I handled it was wrong. The way I treated you was wrong. I just ask you to forgive me for that. And that's basically what Paul is doing here in chapter 23, verses 1 through 5. Okay, let's pause there. We're going to pick up now how Paul's going to begin his argument tactic before this Jewish council. We'll do that next time when we return to devotional number 57, picking up at Acts 23:6 on Here Comes the Bride, the Church Begins. Thanks for joining us.